Those of you that know my channel know that my first vehicle, my first four-wheel drive that I ever owned, and my first love, is the Range Rover Classic. This is the story of my one, and I'm going to try not to repeat myself because of course this video has featured now and again in the many videos that I have made, and many of those on YouTube. But none of you know a lot about this. My name is Andrew St Pierre White. Join me as I build four-wheel trucks and travel to the remotest parts of the world. I'm a prisoner of this hill. This is a diary that I kept during the time that I owned my Classic. Now, let me put it to you this way. If you think that I was a little bit obsessed with my first four-wheel drive, you would be wrong. I was completely obsessed with my vehicle. I have no words to describe how ridiculous this obsession was. And I suppose in retrospect, that's a good thing, because obsessions like this turn into good things when they're channeled, blah, blah, blah. I'm making excuses, but the fact is that I made a career, and that vehicle was the start. The passion for four-wheel driving, the passion started with that vehicle.
This is the main Francistown Mound Road. We're about 230 kilometers from Mound, and the Makati Pans are absolutely swamped. And at this point behind us, we've just crossed, they've actually crossed the road.
And it was a British Leyland vehicle built in 1971. What did you expect? The British then were making amazing cars, amazing sports cars. They were at cutting edge. They all had two things in common, almost all. They had charisma and character. And the other thing was that they were appallingly badly built. They were terrible. The electrics, you know the story, Lucas, he made the electrics, the Lucas, get home before dark, Lucas Electrics. I mean, those things were born out of this appalling build quality. And unfortunately, that appalling build quality didn't really get better all the way through Land Rover production, even to the very last Defender built in, when was it, 2015. They still hadn't a clue. Now, of course, Land Rover is a very different company, making very, very good modern vehicles. And some of them have still got some of that character and charisma, but many of them just look like their Korean and Japanese counterparts. However, back to this vehicle. I'm going to read now. This is a diary, okay, and you can see by quite a few pages of writing, and this is documenting what I was doing with the vehicle on a daily and sometimes hourly basis. I'm going to read the very first entry, followed by the very last entry. And then I'm going to fill in some of the gaps. Now, this video might be a long one, but I'm going to try and keep it moving. 6th of May 1982, which meant that I was 22 years old. Dad drove me to Vereeniging, there's a place south of Johannesburg, to view a 1971 model Davis White. Davis White was the white name of the white color that they made the Range Rovers in. Mark I Range Rover owned by a Mr. Gifford. Being a Mark I version, it was completely bare inside, but it was in superb condition all round, and she seemed to go very well. This was actually the second one that I had test driven. 4 extra brand new Michelin X, M and S radial tires are also being offered as part of the deal. The asking price 8,000 South African rands. I made an immediate offer of 7,000, which was turned down. 2 days later, made another offer of 7,500, which was accepted, and I put down a deposit of 500 Rand. I'll read the next one because the next one really is. And 15th of May, borrowed blah 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 da 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 da. But here's the thing: took some Polaroid pictures of my long-awaited purchase. Total price 7,800 rands. Made a note here of its chassis number, which is interesting: 355042492. Suffix A, so that means it was the 2,492nd Range Rover ever made. So it was one of the first production runs, built in a place called Solihull, which is near Birmingham in England. And the last entry in the diary, 23rd of March 1991. It says here, Lodi was bought. Now Lodi. I generally haven't given names to a lot of the vehicles that I've owned, but I have a few. Lodi was one. Lodi, my Range Rover, it was named after the Creedence Clearwater Revival song Lodi. And it became a family song. And we used to play it in my dad's Range Rover. And we used to do a trip in my dad's Range Rover. And we would play this. It was a favourite song, so I called my Range Rover Lodi. Bought on the 15th of May 1982. I have owned her for 8 years, 8 months and 8 days. I have covered 76,149 miles. That's 121,800 kilometres. So I bought her for 7,500 Rand and I sold her for 26,000 Rand at an average of 17.5 litres per 100 kilometres. She would have consumed 21,321 litres of fuel. Now I could easily go through this diary and pick out a thing. 2nd of February. Fill filter replaced, new vacuum can fitted on 19th of March 1985, and so on and so on. And this would bore you to tears. However, there are a few highlights that I should actually mention. And those are the first major trip I took with it to Namibia. That was 1984. That was the first expedition I took. And I got terribly stuck and learnt a lot about how bad these vehicles were suited to a really rough desert environment. Being created for the UK, they were pretty good in mud, but not that great in desert. And of course, in Namibia, I had to do a lot of repairing, a lot of maintenance to keep it going. And I used to carry a big toolbox and quite a few spares in the vehicle with me. Now, this photograph is of my very first book, and as you can see, Lodi is proudly displayed on the cover, and if you look closely you can see that the back is quite far down. Now you must realize that in 1984 there were no places where I could go and get uprated springs. They just weren't available. Land Rover themselves had a set of uprated springs on offer, which I bought, and it made no difference at all. No noticeable difference. So it was money. I might as well set fire to it. Very soon after I got it, I went driving with my friends. It was actually the 17th of the same month, so it was 2 days after I took delivery of it. I went with my mates Charles and Jonty, and we gave her a little test. Went driving down the river, the Yukskay River, to see if we could get through. Almost needed a tow, just managed to reverse out with all four wheels churning a mixture of water and sand. Now here's my first bit of four-wheel drive, first-hand learning myself. The tow hitch seems to inhibit steep ascents. So I was in this huge learning curve as I started using the vehicle and started equipping the vehicle and adding lights and changing batteries and upgrading the alternator and making it work, and trying also to take this terrible British Leyland curse out of this vehicle and desperately try to make it more reliable. Which I need to say, I failed. I failed completely. I mean, the amount of work I did on that vehicle, and if I think about what I changed on the vehicle, and the word everything comes to mind. Everything except the axles. Only the front and rear diff remained unchanged. During the life of the vehicle, I rebuilt the engine. In fact, I replaced the gearbox for the new 4-speed unit. Had better gearing, it was nicer to drive. So now, having changed the gearbox, Gun and I decided to set off on a little trip.
Camping lot, camping grounds.
We'd go up to the Kruger National Park, about 4 or 5 hour drive.
And we then did some trout fishing, but as you can see we're having chicken for dinners.
Watch some animals, do some camping, have a good time. Right, well, it didn't really turn out that way. It was on that trip that I nearly had an incredibly bad accident. Double lane highway, 90 to 100 kilometers an hour, the vehicle's front right wheel seized solid. It stopped rotating. The vehicle then screamed across the middle island, luckily there was no oncoming traffic, there was nothing I could have done. If there has been, right onto the other side and landed up in a ditch. Shallow ditch, so I managed to drive it out. But anyway, called the tow truck.
At this stage we're waiting for a tow truck. We flagged down a guy going in the opposite direction, and he's going to go and call on a tow truck to come and tow us to the hotel. And what we'll do is when we get to the hotel, we'll check in, have some supper. Tomorrow morning I'll strip it. I'm pretty sure it's
Towed it to a place close to our destination.
what you call holiday travel, white style.
I discovered in fact that there was a maintenance related issue in that if you turn the front steering wheels a little bit too far when checking the oil level in the front CV joints, these were oil lubricated, not grease lubricated, it actually appeared to be full when they were in fact empty. And I had serviced the vehicle and know that the CV joints were full of fresh oil. They weren't. There was no oil in it at all.
I'm about to take it off, but so far I can see that this bearing has not been lubricated from the axle oil, so it's been running dry. It comes off easier than the first. Oh, look at this. It's broken. It's all broken. That's part of it.
Shit. In your opinion, Mr. White,
Yeah.
will this rally vehicle get us back to Johannesburg? Will we still win the race?
Oh, we'll get back to Joburg, all right. We'll get back to Joburg, all right, love.
But of course the main purpose of the trip was to test the new gearbox. The new third and fourth gears were much longer, it was much quieter, much nicer to drive, until it broke down. Now this is a brand new reconditioned box and it failed. The insides collapsed and I managed to drive it home in third gear. I could only get third gear. And what I would do is I would start off in low range, get it to a maximum possible speed in low range, and then try and match the RPM and use the low high range transfer box lever and clunk it into high range and then drive in third gear. But my Range Rover spawned this love of building vehicles because in the Range Rover I didn't so much spend all my time building it and equipping it for overlanding. I spent most of my time keeping it going. Perhaps the two most significant events that happened in the Range Rover were the two accidents I had. The first one happened in early 1987. I was driving quite slowly through a suburb. I was looking for an address and a lady in a little blue Renault 5 came out and I slammed straight into her and then careered through a 12-foot brick wall. Now, the insurance company, because it was a very old vehicle, the insurance company wanted to write it off, but this was my pride and joy. I was going to have it written off, forget it. So I now had a vehicle that had a twisted chassis and it was a mess, but I decided to fix it myself, got some money from the insurance and started rebuilding this vehicle, painstakingly changing the panels that were twisted and bent and really doing a good job going in and taking anti-rust proofing, trying to put some soundproofing on the transmission tunnel because the gearbox was incredibly noisy, and really getting it beautiful and investing time and love and adoration into this vehicle project. And I decided that, in fact, we've had a big expedition coming up to go right around the Okavango, big expedition, big trip. And in fact, this is a separate story still to be told on YouTube, because that trip itself what happened on that trip was actually unbelievable. Part of it was the accident. Now, I'll just talk a little bit about the accident. Semi-head-on collision, Toyota Land Cruiser 1, Range Rover 0. It was a mess. All the work I had done obliterated in the bush. And I actually had to rebuild it. And I managed to get it home. But again, the insurer wanted to write it off. And I again said, no, I don't want to write it off, and they paid me out, and I decided to repair it myself. And that's when I decided, I need a change of good fortune with this vehicle. Let me spray paint it green. So I had a professional spray paint job done on the vehicle, and she came out looking absolutely gorgeous. Okay, it was that moment that I decided to make it Lincoln green. When the Range Rover was first produced, it was produced in a red and a blue and a kind of a gold, which is called the Bahama gold, the dusty color, which is called Sahara dust, and then the Davos white, and then Tuscan blue, which is a nice kind of European bluey color, and then Maasai red, all these African names, and of course the very British, terribly British Lincoln green. And Lincoln green is kind of a lovely, soft green color, beautiful, gorgeous, and it was where I started my love affair for green vehicles. Was my first Range Rover. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. She was, from that point, I did fewer and fewer trips with her, because in 1989 I bought my Land Rover Defender 110, again subject of a separate video. But then the Range Rover started taking a back seat, and I would take it on Land Rover Owners Club rallies, and it was my part-time vehicle. But my love was starting to be diluted by this new, reliable, fresh, nice-smelling Land Rover V8. And so I started using it less and less and less. And then just before I spent a year in Botswana, when Gwen and I went to look after the lodge in the Okavango, I decided, let's be smart and sell it. And it was a huge emotional decision to sell something that was so close to me. So I've never had since anything remotely close to that emotionally, in terms of it's a machine, for heaven's sakes. But sometimes cars do this. Vehicles do this. They make us feel something. They're not just tools. And Land Rovers, not the new ones, but certainly the older ones, and the Defender too, they have a certain, they have a personality all of their own. They get grumpy, they get annoying, they get happy, they change with the weather, just like people do. And it's something about the Land Rover vehicle that I won't say is unique, because other vehicles do that too, especially when they get old. But this is, of course, in our minds. It's not fact. Land Rovers don't have souls. It's in our minds. So we do this to ourselves. I mean, I would get so upset when the vehicle would break down, or particularly when it crashed it. It was mortifying. It was a personal injury. And Some vehicles do this and most vehicles don't. I have never had close to the emotional attachment I have to any vehicles I've ever owned, close to my Range Rover, and to a degree with my Defender, but not to the same degree as I had with my Range Rover. So I remember when I sold it, and I sold it to a guy called Professor Schlemmer. He was a professor, quite well known in the anti-apartheid activist movement, and he wanted to get to his holiday home. He had a little beach cottage or something, and he said to me the road was very bad, and he loved the old classic Range Rovers and would like to have a vehicle that he could use as a bit of a hobby on the weekend. And I sold it for him for, I think, a very good price, and I think it went to a very, very good home. We kept in contact for a very short time after that. He's since passed away, and wouldn't it be magnificent to actually find that vehicle and find its original owners again? Because if I did that and it was in reasonable condition, I would certainly consider buying it back. That's a stupid idea. It's like the worst idea in the world combined with the best idea all rolled into one. Because it's an emotional idea. It's a stupid idea logically, and it's a wonderful idea emotionally. So why not? Thank you for watching my mini-series before Christmas. I wish you all a great Christmas and wonderful happy holidays. I am doing a live broadcast for the following times: New South Wales and Queensland, Victoria and Australia, 2nd of January, 9 in the morning. Western Australia, where I am, 2nd of January, 6 in the morning. South Africa, you're going to be up late, 12 midnight on the 2nd of January. In the UK, that's the 1st of January in the evening at 2200 hours, 10 o'clock. USA Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, 1st of January, 5 p.m. USA Pacific Time, 1st of January, 2 p.m. I'll be answering questions, and I welcome you to join me then. Bye-bye for now.